hope is that we all get it. Don't give in to the pain, just keep living, cause
got dreams I'm striving for. So I'm gonna live higher. I'm gonna live higher. I got dreams.
What's up, guys? It's Toby Rosario, and in today's video I wanted to talk about one of the most commonly asked questions, and that is contracts. Where do I get the contracts for real estate? And we're gonna talk about that. But before I get into all that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also hit that bell notification. That way you get notified whenever I post a new video. Also give this video a like. Comment below if this is your first time as well. And we'll go ahead and get started here. So a pretty common question that I get is where can I get a contract for my real estate business, for my wholesaling business? And I think a lot of people, and I was one of them, I felt like I needed to have everything in place in order to get a deal done, right? I needed to know steps 1 through 10. And the truth is, you don't, right? The number one thing you need to focus on is step 1. And step 1 is finding a motivated seller, finding an off-market deal, right? Finding an off-market deal. Let's just assume this is a motivated seller, right? Putting it under contract, putting the house under contract with the seller for a price that's below market value. Then assigning that contract to what you have with the seller to an end buyer for an assignment fee, whatever's in the middle, right? So in the beginning, a lot of people get stuck on not getting started, right? Not taking action, not moving forward because they don't have this in place. I promise you, the number one thing you need to focus on is finding a motivated seller. That is the hardest part of the business, no question, hands down, right? It's easier to find buyers are a dime a dozen, right? The hardest part of the business is finding a motivated seller that's going to sell you a house at a discount. Make sense? So I wanted to talk about some of the things that you should have in your contract, and maybe I'll see if I get enough engagement on this video. Make sure you follow all the way through. Make sure you watch it all the way through, because in between the video, I am going to be dropping clues on how you might be able to get access to this, or I can direct you to a website, or I can direct you somewhere where you can get a contract that you guys can use. So I wanted to go over quickly some of the things that I like to have in my contract, or that I have in this contract that I feel like are important. Some sort of contingency you definitely need to have. So for me, well, number one, I think across the board for any contract, you need to have in your contracts a statement that says and or assigns. What does that mean? Essentially, what that means is this contract is assignable, meaning you can assign this contract to someone else, right? So if I put this property on the contract with a seller, right? This is a seller. I put it on the contract for $40,000, and the contract says and or assigns. I can assign this to my brother. I can assign this to my cousin, my wife, or whoever. Right? Even though my name is on the contract, I just have to get an assignment contract, and I can assign the rights from this contract to someone else, right? Which in our case is going to be a buyer, cash buyer, who's going to close on the deal, right? If we're not closing on it. So that's the number one thing you need to have in that contract, and or assigns. And before I go further, I almost forgot. I am not a lawyer, so I highly recommend reaching out to a local lawyer, a real estate lawyer, have a contract made, have him look over a contract. That way you don't get any legal trouble, because every state is different. I know some states you actually need to be licensed in order to wholesale, or you need a state. I know Utah is one of them. Every state has different regulations, so I highly recommend that you guys deal with a local lawyer, or find a local investor who has done deals and ask him what contract he is using. And even in that case, I would still recommend getting that reviewed by a lawyer. So, because I don't want you guys coming back and point an authority from your state and be like, this guy told me this contract is legal. So I don't want to get into any any of that. So again, have your contract reviewed, or any contract you get from someone reviewed in locally, because every state is different, and their laws are different, right? So and or assigns, number one, hands down, is the most important thing, because that gives you the right to assign it to someone else. Also, I like to, in my contract, couple things I like here. So it says here, seller and tenant, if any, will make property accessible to show partners, lenders, inspectors, appraisers, contractors prior to close it. What does that mean? A partner, cash buyer, a lender, cash buyer, an inspector, cash buyer, contractor, cash buyer. It's funny because I had to use some of these titles for a deal we're going to close in about a week or two, and oh, my partner's coming, or one of my contractors is coming. That's why I like that's why I like that little contingency there, because it's kind of setting the expectation with the seller. Look, once you sign once this contract is signed, here's what I do. Once I agree with the seller on a price, we get something in writing, the contract, right? I set the expectation of how this is going to go down. If the property is vacant, I'm just going to tell her I'm going to have contractors going by the property so I can get an estimate to see how much the repair costs are going to be, right? If it's owner occupied, I'm going to let the seller know. My funding partners are going to be coming with me, make sure I didn't miss anything, and just take another inspection, take a look at the property, make sure everything is good to go. You want to set the expectation from the get-go, because you don't want to surprise the seller, and then you have all these people showing up to the property, right? So you want to always set the expectation once. So what I do is I always wait until the contract is signed, right? And once I have that control, that equitable interest, then I can tell them this is what you should be expecting from us. I'm going to go ahead and send this contract to title companies so they can start the title search. In the meanwhile, let me know what times, if it's owner occupied, let me know what times I can stop by so I can show my partners they want to take a look at it, make sure I didn't miss anything. My funding partners, they're the ones who fund the deal. And I always say partners because that can be 2, 3, 4 people. If it's vacant, obviously you can just send as many. You just put it on a lockbox. If it's tenant occupied, then you got to coordinate with the tenant. So the same rules apply. You just want to set the expectation that people are going to be coming by to take a look at the property. These are your funding partners or these are your contractors. All right. So I like to have that. And this is one that I have in mind that I don't see in a lot of people. If buyer is unable to complete the purchase for any reason, their earnest money deposit shall be forfeited to the seller as total liquidated damages, and the buyer is released from any further obligation under this contract. So you guys know that I'm putting this on the contract for $1, $10. You know what I mean? So if worst comes to worst, that's what I'm going to lose, that earnest money deposit. I've never had to put more than $10. So that's a good clause to have in there. Sorry. And then, sorry, my eyes are burning here. So, let's see. Also, buyers shall select the closing agent. I always want to be in control. So I want to use my company, my title company that I use to close deals, because they're investor friendly. They understand how it works. I always make sure I look at the HUD before we close, make sure that everything is aligned properly, everything is in the seller side of the HUD, the buyer side of the HUD, everything looks good. I like to have control in that. I don't want to use someone else's side of the company. But so I do like to have that in my clause. Again, make sure make sure you guys watch it all the way through, because I might be giving this contract away, but you have to follow the instructions and you have to watch it all the way through, because I'll be giving hints. Like, number one, the first hint, you got to like this video. Go ahead and like this video. Make sure you like this video. If you don't do that, I won't give you access to this contract. Secondly, another contingency that I like: this agreement is subject to the final inspection and approval of the property by the buyer 10 business days after this date, after the date this contract is received by the buyer. This agreement is subject to the final inspection and approval of the property by the buyer 10 business days after this date, after the date this contract is received by the buyer. The buyer is my cash buyer, right? So it's subject to the approval of my buyer, right? If the buyer says, you know what, it's not going to work, then if worst comes to worst, that I don't have a deal, I truly don't have a deal, I can go back and renegotiate, or I can just back out. I can say I'm not able to perform on this, and let them know that we're gonna go ahead and cancel this contract. Obviously, the seller has to provide clear title, And then another thing I like to do, closing date shall be on or before 45 days from the date signed below by the seller. So I like to have my contract for 45 days, right? I always tell my sellers, again, setting the expectation. So this is the process. This can take anywhere. This can be as soon as 7 to 10 days or as long as 45 days. It really comes down to what is on title, right? If you have clear title, then we can close this in about 2 weeks or 10 days, whatever the case is, whatever you want to say. But I always say it can go we can get to the closing table as quickly as possible, as quickly as the title permits, right? As long as there's clear title, we should be able to close in about 10 days or less. It's really depending on what is on title. So that way you do have a little bit of leeway to delay things if you're having a hard time finding a buyer. It gives you 45 days. That should be plenty of time to find a buyer. But just in case, I do like that little bit of an extension. That way I have plenty of time to show multiple people to the property, so I can get the most amount. Let's see what else here. I mean, that's essentially it. There's a little section that says additional terms if applicable, and then they sign in print. And then obviously, you know, I'm buying this property as is. That's a selling point to the seller. We're buying it as is. You don't have to make any repairs or anything like that. And you know, and then also you're gonna be paying all closing costs. It does say buyer will pay all closing costs. So that's another selling point you tell to the seller. But that's essentially it. So in order to get this contract, number one, I want you to give this video a thumbs up and comment below, I need this contract. Again, you have to give this video a like and put in the comments below, I need this contract. And then I'll see if I can get this to you, or one that's very similar to this. But again, I am not a lawyer, so you guys should definitely, whatever contracts you guys get, should definitely review that. Comment below, I need this contract if you want to. You guys, comment below, I need this contract, and give this video a like. That's my time. My name is Rosario. Peace.